Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Wendy Yee.
I'm Chris Yee.
Today we're taking a look at Isle of Trains. Now this is the original Isle of Trains. Well, it's in a plastic box here. This came out, I believe it was from Greater Than Games. And they did a series of card games that were 52 card deck. That was the game, and there was different ways, and they all were terrible. Except for Isle of Trains.
Oh, okay, got it.
Isle of Trains was good, but I felt like it was really constrained by the 52 card deck. There just wasn't enough. They were using some of the cards to build a board of sorts. Not really a board, but a display. And I just felt there was not enough. Happily, it got reprinted.
Isle of Trains, all aboard.
Many
Big
years
box
later, I don't know, at least 6 or 7 years later. Yeah, so this is a bigger version of it from the
Dronda.
Dronda Games. That dragon is covering up some of the letters. It's harder to read. But anyhow, this is Isle of Trains all aboard. Let's take a look. At the beginning of the game, you're going to place the board out like this, just a bunch of cards put together. This section is only used if you're playing with 4 or more players. You'll have the research station there. Otherwise, you're just playing with these 6 cards. You're going to put the names of each one here. That's just so you can remember that's Camp Eagle. And then these bonus tiles are randomly placed at each one. Now, this here is going to keep track of the rounds of the game, or basically the game end trigger. But most people are going to be actually worried about their own train. At the beginning of the game, everyone's going to start with a level 1 engine. And you're going to have a handful of cards. Now, what players are going to be doing on their turn is they're going to be taking 2 different actions. One of those actions will be to draw cards. Next to the board, there will be some face-up cards, and you can draw from them, or you can draw from the top of the deck when you take cards. You can take 1 card, or you can take a passenger. So you have a bag of passengers, and at the beginning of the game, everyone's going to start with a couple of them. They go to each of the different cities, matched by colors, but you can draw another one out of the bag if you so desire. You can also build. So this is the main part of this game, is building. I want to add different cars. There are 4 different cars that can be added to your train. You can add hoppers, you can add boxcars, and I'm just going to show them to you here. You would make a line of them. Coach or a tanker. These are level 1s. You can always add a level 1, but you can upgrade later on. I can upgrade a level 1 to a level 2. I can even upgrade that level 2 to a level 3 if I want to. Whenever you're putting out a card, you're paying the cost of it. This is 2, 1, 3. By discarding other cards from your hand to pay for it. If you already have, let's say this level 2 hopper, this is 4, this level 3 is 7, I simply have to discard the difference between those. You can even upgrade your starting engine. You can also build cabooses, and you can have as many cabooses, and you can have as many of these cars as you want. And then there's also a building you build, which just goes near your thing, but you can only have 1 building. Buildings are simply endgame scoring. So this one here is going to give me 2 points for oil that I've delivered at the end of the game. Each of these different cars that you build, it can hold resources, and it will show you the kind of resource on it. So the tanker holds oil, the coach holds passengers, even your engine can hold passengers. This holds crates, and this one holds coal. So another thing you can do is you can load. I can put a passenger here. This one here can hold 1 passenger, but if I upgraded it, eventually, let's say I upgraded it to a level 2 coach, it could hold 2 passengers. I could put them in it. If I want to load coal, oil, or boxes, though, I will have to take the card, and you'll notice that this shows oil, so I can only load it in oil, although I can discard a card from my hand to turn a card to the other side and make it so that it's any resource. But once you put it in the car, I know that that is now oil, because it's in a tanker, and it shows oil. Now, here's what's interesting about this game. You can load stuff. That's one of the actions you can do. You can load something on someone else's train. Why would you want to give them that benefit? Whenever you load something on someone else's train, you get this bonus here. That's why it shows all this information at the top. This says whenever someone else puts a passenger in this train, they will draw 3 cards and get 2 victory points. Here it says whenever someone puts oil in, they draw 3 cards. This one says whenever someone puts a crate in, they draw 4 cards. This one says when someone puts a coal in here, they draw 2 cards, and they get to take an extra action. So loading in someone else's train is a good way to get things. You also need to keep track of your engine here. This engine can pull 6 weight. And so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, this caboose would not have been able to have been added. He can only pull 6. Hopefully later on I can upgrade him to a level 3 engine, which can pull 8 weight. Also, each of these cards is going to be worth points at the end of the game. The fourth action that players can do is deliver. So delivering, you're going to be delivering back to this board here. Whenever you deliver to a spot, you can deliver passengers. When you deliver a passenger, you'll put the right color passenger in that spot and take the bonus. This one gives me 2 cards and gives me the B action, which is build. This one here just gives me 5 cards. This one gives me points, and there are some points that the game includes that you can use instead of that. But I also might want to deliver the main objectives. This one requires 2 crates. If I deliver that, I will take this card. That also moves the engine forward 1, and when the engine gets to certain spots on the track based on the number of players, then that will be the end of the game. So this engine moves every time someone takes one of these cards. When I take this card, nobody else can deliver goods there. They can still deliver passengers, but that's it. I'm going to take this and put it near my train, because now that I've delivered these 2 goods, I get 7 points. But I can do a secondary delivery. And in fact, I need to do a secondary delivery before I do another main delivery. So this one would say, hey, if I deliver 2 oil and 3 crates of this, I get an extra 14 points. If I manage to pull that off, I'll turn this over, and the 14 points plus a 7 is 21 points. I'll put this here in my engine to show that I delivered that at the end of the game. Now that I've delivered a secondary objective, I can go deliver another regular objective. And that's the game. Players are going to go around the table, continuing to take 2 actions at a time until someone triggers the end of the game by moving the train here. Everyone gets some last turn. And then you'll add points for your trains, points that you've gotten over the course of the game, points for deliveries that you've made, points from buildings that score you endgame victory conditions, and whoever has the most points is the winner. Just to clarify, if 3 passengers get put in one spot, that will also move the train forward. And if it wasn't clear, you can just build an upgrade to a train without, it's really expensive and almost impossible to do for some of them.
Build a higher level card. Like it's just, I'm going to build straight up a level 3 passenger carriage. Cost like 8 cards or something, yeah.
And you're like, how can you get 8 cards? Because you have a strict hand limit of 5, but that strict hand limit of 5 is at the end of your turn.
Yes, so you can get more during your turn by taking especially those little like passenger actions or tucking and other things.
Yeah, this game has an interesting dynamic where you can load into another player's train to get the benefit from. And you don't get it if you do it yourself.
Straight up, that's the thing. Everything else about the game you've seen before. You've seen games where you build stuff up and you get points and you can get resources and send them in and you pick up and deliver, although this is barely a pick up and deliver, but sort of. It's a pick up and deliver, but it's linear. You're not really going anywhere. It's hard to explain.
It's load and deliver?
Yeah, load and deliver, I guess, is better. But the fact that you can load on other people's trains is the game. That is an unbelievably cool mechanism, I think.
So I typically really like positive interaction, and it's fascinating because I struggle loading other people's trains.
You're against positive.
I just hate positive interaction now. Yeah, exactly. No, but I struggle because I'm like, oh, it's so good. Drawing 4 cards is really good in this game. But also, I'm giving Chris or Tom exactly what they want. Like that's just points. I'm just giving them points. I'm like, here, go make a delivery. It's so hard. It's
nice. We've primarily played this as a 2-player game in which you are just directly helping your one opponent. Mm-hmm. And that dynamic in a 3 or 4-player game is nicer because you can look at someone and
pick
say,
and choose.
You're doing terrible, son. Here you go.
Which is a weird catch-up mechanism that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm in last place. Load my train, please. And everyone does.
It's kind of like in Settlers of Catan. In theory, you always want to trade with the player who is like furthest behind. But in practice, they don't have sheep. And in this game, it kind of balances out that thing where you're like, yeah, I'll help you. I'll just load up a crate that I don't really want, and I'll draw 3 cards I do want. And I like that because of what you talked about, that 5-card hand limit. This is a point where Wendy and I disagree.
We do disagree.
I think that's pretty smart because then you can't just stockpile cards. If you want to be able to buy a very expensive card, an 8-cost card outright, you probably have to have a hand of 5 cards going into a turn.
You think there shouldn't be a limit?
I find that the limit to the cards in hand frustrate me in this game.
Oh my word, if that wasn't in the game, I would drop my rating of it dramatically.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I find it, so I don't know any other games that use cards as currency that force you to discard down. And I don't.
For the Galaxy, you can't have more than 10.
Yeah, but that's 10. That's not 5. Like, there's so few.
Yeah, but you don't have to discard until the end of your turn.
Yeah, but there's plenty of turns where I have 4 cards. I start with 4 cards, and I need 5 cards to be able to build the 6th card that I want, that I have. And you just sit there and you're like, well, if I take one action to draw a card, now I'm at 5. What do I do with my other action? Now I have to wait a whole nother turn to build this, or I draw an extra card and I have to immediately discard it.
Or you draw a passenger.
Yeah,
you can draw a passenger, sure.
Yeah.
There's stuff you can do, but I find that there's a lot of randomness in this, and there's plenty other games that I like that do a very similar thing, like you said. We've seen it other places. But I think it's that very tight hand limit to me that makes it so I don't feel like I can mitigate the randomness of having such a big deck, having those passengers come out randomly, just not being able to find the type of buildings I want or the type of train parts I want, just because there's so much in that
But
deck.
you're zooming through the deck. See, I thought that the game was random a bit when I was playing it a few weeks ago. I got the new version, started playing. I was like, I forgot this is kind of random. Then after a while, I was like, no, we're really flying through this deck. If I really want a card, I can get one.
You can
You
find
draw
it eventually.
5 cards. I'm gonna get one of the. There's only so many different types of cards.
Yes.
I don't care about the cabooses and buildings. That's just kind of icing.
I think that's the problem, is that the cabooses and buildings, I feel like, water down that deck so much, so that, sure, you can eventually find the card that you want, but it might be 3 turns later. And in those 3 turns, somebody else could have found the 2 cards they wanted and built them and been happy.
It did happen where, on your initial hand, you drew nothing but buildings and cabooses, and you're like, hand me the rule book so I can look at these cards really quick. You know what? I actually just don't want any of them. And that was a weird moments like that happen, but I feel like the deck is pretty well composed so that even if you at one point just have like a terrible hand, I think you can churn through cards quick enough that you'll get better ones. Especially if you can just load someone else's train and then draw over and be like, I'm now just going to discard all these other ones I don't want. I think the game has some really nice kind of self-leveling mechanisms to get past those types of situations. The buildings, for example, count as any of the 3 resources. So if you're like, I don't really care about buildings. I already built my 1 building for the game. I guess all of these are just a wild resource now, so it kind of keeps them relevant in a different way, multi-use card kind of a way.
I do like that, yeah, you can always use them as the good that's on them, especially the buildings that are wild goods. That's great. And I do like that they can be used as money, so that if a card is useless to you, it's not useless, like you can spend it. But I also, once again, that hand limit of, if I have 5 cards in my hand that are all cabooses and buildings and I don't want any of these, sure, I could spend one of these cards to draw 5 cards, but then at the end of that turn, like, I still don't have anything. I have to discard down 4 cards then, and I'm like, well, what was the point of that? Like, I gave you stuff. I might not have found the card that I wanted. So I helped you. I didn't necessarily help myself. And I'm back down to 5 cards, so I can't even build the thing if I found it, I may not even be able to build it next turn because I don't have enough cards. And I filled up your spot, so I can't fill it again and get more cards.
Yeah,
So
that's less of a problem with more players because there's more spots to fill. But I don't normally deep dive like that. I will take the 4 cards when I have a card to build.
Yeah.
And some of those cards are harder to build, but I kind of find that to be a challenge. It's fun. I love the game. I have 2 minor problems. One is, I think, first time playing, the symbology is a little confusing. When I give someone a card, I'm like, here's a card. They're like, what is all that stuff at the top of this train card? I'm like, well, actually, none of that's there. I would have added one big icon in the corner of a card and say, oil. Just because I don't think it's as... You can argue and say, well, that's an oil tanker, that's a coal hopper. Yeah, you're right, but I would have made that a little clearer.
Or like what type of good it can hold if you build it as a train part.
Yes.
Yes, that's fair.
I found that weird.
It's a minor thing, and the other minor thing is occasionally in the game, the 3 face-up cards just clog. Especially if they're things people don't want. Oh, there's a level 2 engine, everyone already upgraded to level 2 or 3. Okay, no one wants that card. Now, yes, you might take the card because it's a resource, and that does tend, because I'll sit there and go, I really need a resource. There it is. I'm taking the sure thing rather than one off top of the deck. So it's a minor thing, but I did notice that happening. But those are very minor. Other than that, this is like one of the best fillers I played in a long time.
Did you ever hate draft cards? Because I definitely would see in the lineup, I'd be like, I see you want to upgrade that particular type of train part. I'm going to take that one.
Yeah, well, I was telling Chris, I played a very nice lady in one game several weeks ago, and the very first thing I was like, ooh, a level 2 engine. And she played a level 2 engine and then drew one. I was like, you just played one. She's like, yeah, well, no one else is getting it right now. I was like, oh.
We're playing that way.
That's what kind of game we're playing here. But it doesn't.
Gloves are coming off, I see.
But as mean as that sounds, the rest of the game is so nice and so overwhelming. That's just minor. Also, those engines do come up later on. You can upgrade.
Yeah. One small production thing I thought was weird is that the level 1 trains, the level 1 engines, I thought that they were removed from the game. I don't know about that. So it's weird that these level 1 engines, I think they might cycle through the deck. I couldn't find in the rules if they said that they're removed, because they're functionally useless. You can't have more than one engine on a car, on a train. So
they should have a different back, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, because they still can be spent as a resource, but then you got to like find the level 1 engines if they are cycling through the deck to start the next game. Because this is a game that you could kind of just be like, deal them up again. Let's play again. It's surprisingly quick. It's also surprisingly not really train game feeling.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
You are building a train. I mean, I have minor things like, okay, I get the original game was like, hey, put 6 cards out as a map. I'm like, well, or you could just have this box is big enough, you could have put a little folded board to be that map.
But you're collecting it, and then you're flipping it over.
Yeah, that's true. Never mind.
It's got purposes.
Yeah, I think it does a lot with a little, and it's still, even though it's a more filled out version, and Wendy said this is one of those games that has like a big old deck of cards that you're trying to like get through, but I feel like it has a lot of restraint. It's a good amount of game in a small little box, and I appreciate that about it.
I do think that it's got, like what you said, like it fits that small box thing really well. It fits in the cards amount that it has. I don't think that it's overblown. It's not like a Terraforming Mars kind of massive deck that you've got 8 expansions on. I do wonder if they could have expanded those cards where they had the map, like if they could have had alternate places for you to go. So you could have a different setup every time.
Maybe.
I could see that just being something simple to have done.
What would you rate it?
Are we doing scores? I'm going to give this a 6. It just didn't quite sing to me. There's a lot of elements in this that I do tend to enjoy in games. And I was thinking about, I was like, Boone Lake does this very card thing that I love about just using cards as resources and having them multi-use and having to decide, am I going to keep it for its ability and build it later, or am I going to spend all those cards, or am I going to spend it as a resource? So I like that element. I like a lot of what's going on, the building the train. But I think at the end of the day, it doesn't sing for me because of that hand limit. Because in games where you draw that many cards, it's very much, you have to be opportunistic. You have to be able to work with what you have. And I feel like the ways that they make it tight because of the card limit for each round, and then the fact that when you take one of those assignments, that's now your assignment forever until you've completed the second half of it. I think that those parts of it make it so that I can't be opportunistic in the way that I want to be, and so I'm not getting endorphin hits in this game. And maybe you guys are, and I think that's cool. But I'm not receiving that, and that's what I want out of a quick little game like this, is I want to be able to feel like, ooh, I'm succeeding, I'm having fun. And instead I feel like, drawing another card, whew, helping Chris, helping Tom, drawing more cards, discarding, like I'm not getting what I want. And so there's those moments. I think also the iconography, like Tom said, like there's so much iconography, and if you get a handful of cabooses and buildings and you're just like, is it worth it? Is it worth the time to sit and analyze every single one and read every single card and think, is this going to fit in my strategy? Or is it easier to just be like, meh? And so I do wonder if I played this a bunch of times, if I put a lot of effort into learning this, I think I would eventually enjoy it. But I think it requires more work than I'm willing to put in for such a small game.
Interesting. I'm giving this a 7.5. I have a lot of fun with it. I think that it pulls off the idea of building up a train. It feels nice seeing it in front of you. And so even though it doesn't have that pick up and deliver aspect of it, I still like what's going on. I agree that when you take a card, a contract, you fulfill that first half, you're kind of locked into it, locked into fulfilling the second half of it. And I think that that's maybe where it'd be nice if there was a little bit more flexibility, because it is such an opportunistic game of, I drew these cards in my hand, I could build this up to kind of go this other, I still have to finish this thing. Mm-hmm. In terms of game arc, that's probably a net positive, but it is one little hampering thing. Otherwise, it's very smooth. It's very fun. I love the positive interaction. I love that I'm considering helping you, even though I don't want to help you, because 4-card draw and do a free load action, which could then turn into a delivery action because I have all of this stuff. It combos really well. I like it. The production is gorgeous. I really like the way that it looks spread out on the table. I have a lot of positive things to say about it, so it's 7.5 for me.
I'm much higher, actually. I'm an 8.5. I really, really like this. I love these type of games to begin with. This is not the only one this week I'm playing of this sort, reviewing of this sort. The idea of spending cards from your hand to build cards from your hand, I don't know why. I love that. Race for the Galaxy is one of my favorite games. Mm-hmm. And I like this one. I so disagree with Wendy on the tightness. I normally am the opposite. I like games to be looser and give me more things. But because of the cards of this one, there's just something satisfying about that. The little bit of pushing, do I want to load up 2 passengers of the color and then the resources, and I only have to make 1 trip to the island to then get everything, but that's kind of a pain. I should just send this guy now to get the cards. I like those sorts of options. Yes, I think they should have put a little sheet with the cabooses in there that shows you what all the cabooses do that I could pass around instead of the rule book. And it's definitely a filler for gamers, right? I think more so than other people. But I just... Man, this is one I think I'm going to pull out a lot. I think it's fun, and I can say the name of the game and not have to worry about separating the words. I can say I love trains, and I'm fine. It's not cats.
8.5.
Minor details matter. But yeah, like Chris said, also just a great little production here. And
it really is.
Look how small the box is. Still, not everything has to be 600 pounds. Anyway, that's Isle of Trains All Aboard. Check it out. I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Wendy Yee.
I'm Chris Yee.